Creating an Art Journal Booklet, presented by LPL.
Today we're going to be making a booklet that we're going to turn into an art journal. So the way we're going to do that is using a file folder and some copy paper and then some string to use as the binding. I'm going to show you how to make this. Okay, first you're going to need a letter-sized file folder. You can use a legal size if that's all you have, but you don't need anything that big. Okay, and it can be one that you've already used as long as it doesn't have markings all over it. Additionally, you're going to need some copy paper or printer paper, just plain. Okay, you're also going to need some kind of string. This is baker's twine, which is nice and thin, regular twine, which is a little bit thicker. And you can also use something like embroidery floss or even some thin yarn. First off, we're going to make the paper that's going to go inside of the booklet. So, and this is going to be the pages that you're going to put your art on in the art journal. So the first thing I like to do is get out my paper. If you want to do a full year, you're going to need 12 pages of paper. If you're going to do half a year, you do 6 months. 6 pages of paper. And if you were going to do 3 months, obviously you would do 3 pieces of paper. So what I like to do is one of two things. You can either watercolor your papers, and basically what that's going to do is create a wash over them, and I'll show you an example of that, like this. I suggest keeping it nice and light. You'll see here this is a little bit darker, and I think a paler color is better. So that's just me. I took a brush and I just brushed the paint on and let it dry on one side, and then I flipped the page over, brushed, let it dry, and right before it was fully dry on that side, I took an iron on a low steam setting and I ironed it out. And it still leaves a nice texture on your paper when you do this, but it also helps to keep it kind of flatter because otherwise the edges tend to curl up. The next technique you can do is to antique the page. And so what you do first is you crumple up your paper really good. You just want lots of little cracks and crevices in it. You want it to look abused. Okay. Once you do that, you open it back out and flatten it out. Then you're going to take your spray bottle with, like I said, either some really dark brewed coffee or tea, and you're going to spray it on. Oh, why not? And you want to get good coverage on this. And you want it to be uneven. You want it to be a little bit darker in some places, a little bit lighter in others. So don't feel like you have to be perfect. And you don't need to drench it. You don't need to soak it. So what you're going to do is leave it like this. Let it air dry. You may want to, after about 5 minutes, pat some of this down. But let it air dry. And then you're going to flip it over. And you're going to do the same for the other side. And when you do that, it's going to look really brown and stuff, and it's going to curl up on the edges because of all the water. So the next thing you do is, again with the watercolored pages, you simply, when you're doing the other side, let it get to where it's damp but not wet, and then you take out an iron. Again, you want a low steam setting, and you're just going to steam dry the page, and it's also going to help keep the edges flat. And makes for kind of a prettier page. Okay, so once you get your pages done, then we're going to pull out the folder. And look, this is just a sample of what the antiqued page can look like. This one, instead of crumpling it, they folded it different ways. But it still looks really nice. So the next thing we do, we want to get out our our file folder. Okay, and you can open it up and you'll see right here, I'm going to try and get it a little closer. You can see right here that there's these creases, and that's for allowing it to be a folder that holds more paper. So we're going to open it at just that first crease. It's about a quarter of an inch. And I'm just going to crease that out. And what this is going to do is allow you, especially if you're going to have a full year worth of art journal, this is going to allow those pages room to breathe and not be so smushed together. So now you've got this, and I'm gonna mark it so that you can see better where I'm working from. Oops. Around for right at the edge. Okay. So now you can kind of see where this is. Now we're going to want this to be the back cover of the book, okay, of the booklet. And this is going to be where the binding goes. So we're going to want all our binding to go in the middle, in between these two lines, okay? So next what we want to do is get out a piece of paper that you're going to want to fold in half. Okay, I've already folded this one in half. Okay. And you're going to line up the crease on this one in between these two, okay, on the file folder. And I'm also lining the paper up along the edge of the file, the bottom edge of the file folder. It's up to you. You don't have to. You can put it just smack in the middle. But I like to conserve, so I'm going to do it this way. And what I do here is I take my pen again and I'm going to make a mark, not a big mark, where the paper would go. Now see, with this booklet cover, we want it to go out around where the paper is going to fall. We want to give it a little lip all the way around so that it has about a quarter of an inch. And that just makes it prettier and more presentable. So now that we've measured out where the paper is, what I'm going to do is go around and measure out about a quarter an inch from that. And I'm actually just going to eyeball it a bit because so that's about a quarter of an inch. And I'm going to mark it all the way. And I'm going to do the same for this side. Okay. And then one more time across this way. And you know what? I'm going to turn this in. Be a little bit easier for me to do this. And I just want it to go in between these two. Okay. And again, doesn't have to be perfect, but if you like to make things perfect, feel free to do that. Okay, so once we've got this all lined out, that's where we're going to actually make our cuts into the file folder. So get out your scissors. I'll probably speed this part up. So now we have this part, which we can put away and use for some other project, or you can just throw it away. Okay, and so now we have our lovely little thing. And remember, the middle is not here or here, it's right in between these two, okay? That's how it's going to lay when it's a booklet. Okay, so now that we've done that, and you can see, watch, I'm going to put a piece of paper here. And it's going to be about in the middle. And you see how there's like this nice little lip all the way around, you know, so you can, you know, it just makes it more like a actual book that's been published. Okay, so now that we've done that, the next step is to measure out along this spine in the middle. Okay, we're going to measure out at 2.5, 4.5, and 6.5 inches. I'm going to do that right now. So I'm actually going to line my ruler up here. With the top. Okay. So 2.5, 4.5, and 6.5. Okay, now these are spots where we're going to make holes so that we can run the string through and bind the papers and the folder together. Okay, so once you've done that, you can get out, and this is the way I suggest doing it. You can use just the skewer and try and poke through, but it can be really hard, especially with the file folder because it's thicker than paper. So what I do is I punch a hole through with this tack, you know, where I'm then going to put through my skewer. Okay, so now you can take a skewer. This is just a wooden skewer. You could use a metal skewer. You could also use a pencil. Just something with like a sharper end and a wedge shape. And then I'm just going to push that through and make a nice big hole. Okay. And really, I ought to be doing this from the back because this is how we're going to be pushing our thread up through the back. So let's do it that way. Now I do want to make a comment here that if you wanted to cover this book with scrap paper, craft paper, origami paper, anything like that, you could actually do it before this step, then make your marks, and then put your paper in. But you can also do it the way I'm doing it right now, which is to get the booklet together first and then cover it afterwards. And now what we want to do is make a hole in our paper that corresponds to, that's going to correspond to where these holes are. And you could just technically just hold it like this and make little marks and then do it. But you can also measure it out. And what we're going to do is measure it out to 2, 4, and 6. So we did 2.5, 4.5, 6.5 on the file folder, and now we're going to do just on the page, take the file folder away, we're going to do 2, 4, and 6. I like to know where my crease is. So 2, 4, and 6. I was off the crease just a little bit. Okay, and then again, now at this point, you know, I'm just using one piece of paper. You might have 12 pieces of paper you need to do this with, and what I suggest you do is you break it up into 3. 3 at a time you're going to do this with. You're going to make your marks, and then you're going to punch through with our handy dandy tack, or push pin, as some people call it. Now, if you need a bigger hole because you're using a bigger piece of twine or you're using yarn, grab a pencil instead. And then just push it through to how big you think you might want it. See how much bigger that is than these? So quite easily, just a pencil. You probably do that with a pen too, certain pens. But those may make marks that you don't want to make. Okay, so now we're going to say that we have all the paper we're going to put in here. And again, when you do this part, this is the binding part that we're going to do. When you do this part, you really want to do it in 3 pieces of paper at a time. So you'd have this, instead of 1 piece of paper like this, you'd have 3. And then your total is 12, but you want to weave it through the paper 3 at a time. You can try and go ahead and do 12, but if you're having trouble with it, try the 3 at a time. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take about 24 inches, it doesn't have to be more than that, that's for sure, of twine, of this baker's twine, and this is what we're going to be using to bind this together. So the first thing you want to do, I'm just going to kind of take this away. So we're coming up from the back. So we're coming out through this hole and out through this hole. So these 2 holes. And then we're going to take both ends of the twine and we're going to put it through the middle hole. Okay? And it's going to come up through the paper like that too. So first thing we do is get this through there. If you need help getting that through there, grab your skewer or your pencil to help you push it through. But mine went through okay on its own. So we're just going to pull some of that out. And then I'm going to take the other end and do the same thing down here. We're going to be cutting off these tips, so I've used my mouth to moisten them so that they fit through better. Kind of like when you're threading a needle. You don't have to do that. You could use wax instead if you have some. Maybe even a little Vaseline. But we're going to be cutting these tips off, so I don't mind using my saliva so much. Okay. So we've got it through the file folder, and now we're going to get it through the paper. And I've done this for 12 pages before, so just because I'm showing you with just the one doesn't mean it can't be done with 12 pages. It can definitely be done with 12 pages. Okay, just remember you're going up through the 2 end holes. So you're coming up from the back. Okay, and then I like to make these look about the same and pull it a little taut. Okay, so now both of these ends, and this is a trickier part and you're going to need something to help you with it. Both of these ends are going to go through the middle here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make sure that that's big enough. Okay. And then I'm going to thread it through. And it's working pretty good for me. But again, remember, if you take this, it's going to help you push, you know, this stuff through. So just keep working at it. And look, I did not get this done the first time. Like, I totally didn't understand this. The first time I did it, I had to do this like 3 times before I got it right. So, and if that's the case with you, no big deal. Who cares? Okay. Practice makes, you know, perfect, or at least better. So now that the 2 ends of the twine are coming up through the middle hole to the back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave one of them back under, okay? And I'm going to tighten it up. And you're going to make 2 knots. So 1, 2, okay? And then you can make a little bow. And then cut off any excess that you don't want. So I can make a double bow if I wanted to. I'm not going to. and then just cut off. Boop. That gets rid of the saliva thread. And now we have our bound booklet for the art journal. Pretty sweet. Okay, thank you for joining me today. Happy art journaling.